This is Her Truth Revealed, a podcast for women in midlife who are done performing strength and ready to live, lead, and build from truth. If you've spent years holding everything together, being capable, dependable, and quietly exhausted, this space was made for you. I'm Wonderful Morrison, and for the last few years, I've held space for other women's stories. Now I'm opening space for my own. This new chapter is not just about sharing personal stories. It is a love story with myself. And if you're here, it is likely because something in you is ready for that too. Through solo reflections and guided conversations, we explore the quiet transitions, the deep healing, and the remembering that happens when a woman stops performing and starts listening inward. This is not about fixing yourself. You are not broken. It's about returning to who you have always been, beneath the roles, the expectations, and the armor that once kept you safe. If you are longing for language or what you feel permission to soften in a place where your truth does not need to be explained or justified, you are in the right place.
My friend. It's so good to see you. Uh, I know we covered a lot in the last episode. I am really excited to dig into this episode. I've already got a burning question on them. So I'd like to go ahead and jump right into this. You gave me a sneak peek into this book that you're writing. I'm so excited for it to be completely written and just dig into it. You talk about how there's this discovery phase that you have where you're saying goodbye to your good girl era. Um, and you say in there, you're seeing clearly for the first time, not fixing, not healing, but noticing. So I want to relate this back to an experience that I had yesterday, a bit of an aha moment, and where I was kind of like, I was also noticing. So, and it seems very relevant here. So let me go ahead and explain. I think I consider myself a very solutions oriented type of person. I love strategizing. When people ask for help, I immediately go into action mode, fix mode, especially if it's something that's my expertise. And so yesterday, or I think it was a couple days ago now, there's a very important person in my life, and he had come to me with a situation. And I immediately went into that action fix mode, and I noticed myself. I was like, okay, this is what we're going to do. This is what I'm going to do on my end. And so I immediately got to work, and it was about 10:30 at night. I was working on some of this stuff related to this situation, and I stopped myself and I said, Sonia, don't be like staying up until the wee hours of the night like I would normally do, just getting everything perfect. And so I did just that. Like I stopped at a decent hour. I'm like, okay, I'll get to it when I get to it. I fell asleep, woke up at about 4 a.m. because I have a 50-year-old bladder that just won't let me sleep through the night anymore. And so I couldn't go back to sleep, but I just kept thinking about, why do I get so fixated on fixing and going into action? And, this individual, he didn't say to me, I need you to do this, right? He wasn't like, yes, there was help being asked, but he wasn't being so specific. And I was like, what is this need? And it occurred to me that the fixing is a means to prove my worth, right? Like, I can fix this for you. So that means I am worthy. And it made me realize that not only is it about me being the heroine in his story, it's also about me being the heroine in my own story. Like, Sonia saves the day again, like, equals I'm worthy. And what am I doing that for, right? Like, I don't have to prove my worth. Like, and this isn't me being, ego driven or whatever. Like, I'm like, There's no need for any of that. And, then I started to realize it's like almost like this ego power savior trip that I'm on, right? And, this individual, I also recognize that, when he opens up to me, like in this situation, I'm feeling really bad for him. And he's just telling me how he feels. But I stop that. And I'm like, I go into defensive mode. I get protective of him. And I'm talking bad about the other people or the situation because I'm trying to tell him, like, you're so much better than this. And
Mhm.
we had gotten off the phone and I called him back and I was like, I recognized, I was like, hey, I realize that I'm just not allowing you to just express yourself, almost trying to negate what you're feeling by telling you all these amazing things about yourself when you're just simply just wanting to express your feelings. And so it was really interesting. I'm catching myself in the things that I am doing and saying, and realizing that I'm making it about me for one, but it goes back to being the good girl, right? To me, the good girl is being able
Right.
to fix everything and save everyone. But I'm like, I don't need to be doing that. Like, I don't. If I
Mhm.
enjoy doing that, great. But it doesn't mean that I need to do it to prove my worth.
Right.
Um, So, when you say you're seeing clearly, what I'm getting out of that is that exactly this, like I'm like, oh my God, I'm recognizing what's happening here. I'm catching myself in the moment and then I'm stopping that behavior. Is this what your experience was when you say that I'm seeing clearly, I'm not fixing, not healing, just noticing?
It's interesting when you were talking, I was just like running through data in my brain of how often I think as women, my mother, I'm pretty sure my grandmother, I didn't really know her, but just based on the stories they have told me about her, I think it's generationally there's two things going. We're taught to be good girl in terms of we've got the capability to
Mhm.
see what is missing and fix the holes.
Mhm.
But then there's an innate need for all human beings to be mama bears, right? Like I think, when you hear that term of mama bear, I think it's at first I'm thinking, oh my gosh, yeah, funny and very relatable. But I think it's also very innate. There isn't one person that has a stronger mama bear in them than another person because of a natural need to protect and save. But I think there's lines that we cross because we haven't been so good at boundary setting within ourselves. Like we hear so much about like, oh, have boundaries. Therapists, counselors. There's a best-selling book out there called Boundaries, and boundaries is a very um, communicated term in relationship building and relationship growing. But at the same time, what I believe boundaries are like, here's a line I have written or drawn, and that's if you cross that, that's crossing boundaries. But I think there's even little tiny spaces in us of boundaries within ourselves. Like we assume this boundary is towards another person
Mhm.
not being able to cross our boundary and us not crossing that boundary. But what about our own personal little awareness boundaries that we haven't even, because you can't give what you don't have. So if I don't have boundaries for myself, then I don't. So that's what I relate it to is like, oh my gosh, this boundary thing is so many layers deeper than I
Mhm.
initially thought. Cause I just thought, well, I don't like this. I don't like that you behave this way towards me, say things like, so if that's my boundary and you cross it, I'm done. We're not
Yeah.
going to be, but I think there's a lot of little spaces that these boundaries are being crossed. And if it's true that it takes tiny little habits, right? We start off with weightlifting, no pounds, our body, and then we go to 2 pounds, and then we just get stronger. And then by some point, there's 20 pounds, and you're like, wow, my body can handle a lot to grow this muscle that was once weak. I think it's the same. Our good girl started off with no weights of because it's a muscle. It's a good girl muscle that we've been cultivating, nurturing, and growing for a really long time, which was actually meant for good because there's a certain amount of it that protects us. Like
We're not just going to run out of our house and behave so badly, right?
Yeah.
But I don't think there were very clear communication of what those boundaries are in the spaces that you cannot see, that you can't verbalize and communicate. And I think that is what you're talking about when it's like, why do I need to fix it? Why do I need to make this a thing? Or why do I judge myself in order to judge other people? And when I say I am done with the good girl era, is I didn't notice it until I was making decisions because I wanted to be loved one more, like if we do a point system, an additional point system.
Yeah.
So my example is like with my kids, I have 3 grown kids. My oldest daughter is 31 and my middle daughter is 28. She's going to be 29. And then my son's 24. And there are things that I don't need to do for them anymore. But like you, when they bring something up, my immediate thought is they're not sharing it with me. They are telling me because they need it fixed. I naturally, and the assumption is, oh, well, you're mom. It's mama bear mode. No. I mean, they're not, they can wipe their own butts. They are very self sufficient. But why do I assume that I need to do things for them that they're 100% capable of? Right? It's the same scenario, just different people. But maybe you have a tendency to beat yourself up a little bit more because it's like, well, he didn't ask. Well, neither did my kids, but it's just more natural because
Yeah.
they're my kids, right? But they're like, what is that about? And I think that, and this is just me, my personal view of what my current experience is, it's a way for me to distract myself from what does wonderful really want. Because if I'm focused on, well, I'm gonna cross this boundary, which is the boundary, the line I drew is, it's my time.
Yeah.
It's my time to focus on me. What does wonderful need? Who is wonderful today? Because I don't no longer have the exterior expectations of like, mom, the wife, friend, there's not any more, there's no more excuses,
Yeah.
right? But it's also a really hard question to ask because I've spent 52 years not focusing on me. So I have to sit with myself. I have to write things out. I have to really allow this process of like, how much more healing do I need? Oh, I've gotten enough healing. I do want something more. There's this ember of spark in me that wants to do more, but oh my God, I've never been. These are all the internal things that are happening of like, when I focus on me, it is kind of scary. It's daunting because now I get to choose into my life.
Yeah.
Oh, when situations come up where, oh, mom, blah, 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 I'm just telling you this. They didn't ask me to fix it. That my immediate thought is like, this is a way for me to go over here so I don't have to focus on me. That's the truth. That is the actual depth of truth that I think we're all asking ourselves, like, well, I need to fix it. No, because they didn't ask. And honestly, when people come to you with an issue and they're not asking for you to fix it, they're just sharing, right? In your conscious mind, you're like, this person is so capable. I believe in them. So I did not raise children that could not be sufficient within themselves. And yet, the minute they share a little thing, I'm like, I could figure that out because it takes away from having to sit with myself just a little bit longer to figure out, hmm, what does wonderful really want? Just before this interview, I've been busy all morning. And then my internet is acting up. My Zoom is acting up. My energetic field is being disrupted because it is really scary for me to say, I'm going to commit to sharing myself. And it's not because it's vulnerability. It's really not the vulnerability I'm sharing with the world. It's vulnerability with me because I have committed on my second birthday, I'm going to focus on wonderful. What does wonderful want? But to sit with myself regularly, asking myself, is a lot more than I thought. So it's easier to be distracted. It's easier to be like, actually, Sonia, today's not going to work because my internet's not working.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so late. I can't get to you. I don't know. Right. And how often do we do that to ourselves as women in our midlife? Because for the first time, maybe in our lives, us overachieving, high performing women are not putting that massive amount of energy into the external world. We're trying to refocus it inward. And that is a lot harder than doing stuff for other people.
So, do you think it's a matter of deconditioning then? And I ask this because initially, you said that this is innate in us, right? Like I don't have any children of my own. I have my pet, my dog, whom I love to death, and he's definitely my child.
Bring him on the show.
I will. He's taking a sun bath right now. But I have nieces and nephews and stuff, and I think you talked about this mama bear thing. And yeah, towards this individual, definitely, like I've shown that mama bear plenty of times. My 5 foot ass, pardon the language, has tried to fight other people because, they looked at him wrong. But I ask this because, you and I both, come from Asian immigrant parents. And I think that, every culture is different. But I think it's the same across the board in that women, there's a rule that society has built upon us, right? And, there's varying degrees for it. So I think that there is an innateness within us, but then I also think part of it is a conditioning. And so it sounds like, there's an aspect of deconditioning us now, right? Where we're recognizing, like, hey, I want to start focusing on the things that bring me joy. But what is that? Like maybe, I mean, yes, we all have our hobbies and stuff, but like I think there's kind of a spiritual aspect of like what makes us happy that we haven't really had an opportunity to explore. But then there's this like kind of barrier of like, well, wait, I got to decondition myself out of trying to save the entire world and knowing that it's not going to fall apart if I don't do this one thing. So you said something really interesting. And you talked about these little boundaries that we have to set with ourselves. Is it kind of like the notion of, you got to love yourself before you're able to give love to others? Do you feel like you got to start with setting your own boundaries towards yourself before you can start setting boundaries towards other people or other situations?
So absolutely. But again, it's sort of a broad, large subject. So there's so much out there, so much information about that, right? Whether it's little tiny clips on TikTok or full on books, podcasts, there's so much language about, boundaries and how to do that. But what I've found to be incredibly interesting is how this deconditioning is actually healing. It's like the process of healing. And we have to go back 8 layers because I think as a high achieving, high performing woman, it has been my armor to a protection is if I get things done and I do it really well and I do it all the time, and that's what I am sort of building my personal brand on is like I'm a doer. Like I ask for forgiveness later. Like I don't ask for permission. I'm that type of person, right? Very driven to I know there's a battle, I'm going in. Like there's
Yeah.
no so with that type of attitude and personality, I feel like for me, there's been a lot more layers that I had to go back to of why. Why don't I want to focus on me? Why am I not, like you said initially, worthy to myself, not worthy to anyone else, not worthy but worthy to myself. And that's why the forgiveness work that I did with my coach, Brenda Reese, really unraveled a lot of this conditioning. So I don't know if it's actually considered deconditioning because that's what I thought. I went in going, okay, we're cutting all this parts off that does not serve me. You
Yeah.
hear it all the time in the beginning of the year, like get rid and let go of all the things that don't serve you. The challenge with that is there's a part of my personality that's already intertwined in that. So it's not really about the severing or deconditioning. It's about the compassion within myself. I need to be compassionate to myself that drive, that version of myself protected me, saved me, helped me to grow, gave me a life that I wanted, and gave me some headaches that I didn't want as well. And we have to be, what I learned through this process is compassion for all of me was more of the step forward than the deconditioning. Because deconditioning for a doer like myself is like severing the heads of dragons, like cutting that off, when actually you need the dragon.
Yeah.
There is parts of you that still need that, and being compassionate to it and nurturing it and loving it and letting it have its own forgiveness has been more helpful than saying things like letting go. The
Yeah.
things I need to let go of is behavioral processes that I created from that space. Those are the things I believe I let go of. Like when my children come to me and share, not fix, ask me to fix, share, or my husband or my friends, for instance, like, oh my gosh, this is happening. I go through this process of like immediate, because my gut tells me right away, oh, it's on. It's like a battle we're going. And immediately, because I know that now, I'm aware of it, I can breathe into it and go, wait, they're not asking me to fix. I got to take a breather on this. I got to take a step back and let my dragon for the calmness. Because I'm still on the dragon. My dragon still exists. And it's still the largest, the biggest, the baddest in the land. It just doesn't react the way it used to, because I'm giving myself the opportunity to hear what's being said. So then I just pet it and calm it and be like, oh, no, 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 no. It's our fight. This isn't ours. It's good. I'll let you know when it is, though.
I love the analogy of the dragon. I think that's like, that's perfect. And what I'm hearing is that I think it's recognizing, one, that there is a dragon and that dragon has been at, like, 100%. It's having compassion and gratitude for that dragon, and then
Yes.
taming that dragon and being like, all
Yes.
right, I'll let you know when it's okay to show up. Um,
Yes, that's it. That's exactly it. And I think too much of this healing process is assumed in the space of like, we're getting rid of that part of our arm because that
yeah,
arm is gangrened.
yeah,
And actually, is it though? That is we didn't even take it to the doctor. We're just thinking it's gangrene, right?
yeah.
And
We're
the
looking it up
thing
on WebMD and doing our own diagnosis. Yeah,
so not good. And I did that for years. I've
yeah,
been cutting off parts of me because I'm like, no, I know. Nobody needs to tell me.
yeah.
I can see it. And I mean, it smells foul. This thing is done. Yeah. And I still have one arm to go to the battle. I'm probably still really good with one arm. Like my one arm is probably the best of somebody else's two arms. So, and I think that is the mentality that what you're talking about, this initial story of when somebody you care about
Yeah.
deeply is like, oh my, but it's interesting because the first time I heard one of my coaches say, but did they ask you to save them? I almost felt offended. I'm like, what do you mean? They don't need to ask me. They sound in distress. That's
Yeah.
all I need is the little hint of like, there's distress. I'm coming in.
Yeah.
And when she asked me that, she goes, well, did they ask you to save them? So many emotions went through me of like, first of all, how dare you ask? Secondly,
Dragon was
what
coming
is,
out.
thirdly, love them. So I'm going to save them. And then as she's continuing to communicate this idea of you're not allowing them to experience their own journey, it dawned on me of like, it's actually a reflection of myself, of not allowing myself my own journey. That's where it hit me more than the shame of like, oh yeah, you're right. They didn't ask. I should go find somebody else to save. It reflected more of
Yeah.
what am I not allowing myself to experience in my own journey because I'm so distracted saving other people from their own journey. And then that's the conundrum of this good girl is deep, right? This
Yeah.
people pleasing thing is a deep And it comes to what you initially said about worthiness. Why do I not feel worthy enough for me that I need to find it in other people?
Yeah.
That is really a big deal.
Something interesting just came to mind. You saying finding it in other people, right? Our worthiness. Um back in 2023, I was laid off from my job that I've been at for 20 years. And it was
I
a
remember that.
huge blow. I'm very, invested in my career, in my education. I'm proud of it. And it's been part of my identity, and so I felt completely lost after it had happened. I mean, my dad was still around at that time and he was consoling me. He was like, been working for 25 years. Give yourself a break. You're fine. You're going to be fine. But all I kept thinking was, I don't know who I am, without this part of me. And so I sometimes wonder if maybe I'm looking for ways to like let myself know that, yeah, I'm still career oriented. I'm still career driven. Case in point with this situation, it was about like helping someone, in their career path. And so I immediately jumped on it, because I was like, oh, yeah, like I'm good at this stuff. Like, this is what I can do. But now that we're talking about this, I'm like, I think part of this is me kind of like still trying to make sure that I am that career driven
Oh,
person.
yeah.
That identity is not completely lost. But I think that like hearing you talk about the analogy with the dragon, it's like, there's so many facets to us, right? I don't want to call them identities anymore. I think it's just there's so many facets to us and they can coexist. And I think it's okay that sometimes they're maybe a little dormant, you know.
And I love what you said that they can coexist because for a doer like myself, that I have no clue what that meant initially. Like, what do you
Yeah.
mean coexist? We're either going this way or no way.
Yeah.
And easing into that coexistence, that took some time to understand because my behavior is so set to reactiveness of my path, right? I can
Mhm.
only see forward. And it took, that's why I think for me, I consider this my softening era. But in the beginning, it was hard, Sonia, because I remember thinking, like, my gosh, I have to get away from my hardcoreness. As my children would say when I ask them, how would you describe your mom? And my son, well, my one daughter says aggressive, and my son says, well, like assertive. You're assertive. And but I really, it was hard to admit that I enjoy that part of me. It was hard to like, cause I was like, as I'm healing through this process of forgiving who I thought was people, honestly, was just forgiving myself. I was like softening and I thought, but I still love that part of me that's ambitious, that's motivated. But I just didn't wanna do it the way I'd done it before, where it was very reactive, very, like, head first, do now, think later type
Yeah.
attitude,
Yeah.
and I wanted to be more mindful and, like, I wanted to console myself or, like, counsel myself prior to. It was really difficult, so then I went to this stage of I'm done. I'm done with the world. I'm gonna go run away, basically is what I did. Like I left. I physically left my home, told all my clients I'm taking a break for a month and because I didn't know how to deal with it. I'm at a better place where I can coexist in the version of me that's still ambitious and then the version of me that's softening. But I just haven't quite figured out what that looks like, but I don't need to know either.
Yeah.
I don't need to have a view of it. I don't need to have a vision board of it. I'm allowing myself to breathe into every version of me that needs to exist. And I know that sounds really like, me too, girl. I'm for that. It isn't for the faint of heart because, like you're experiencing right now, and I think in our lives, something big happens. It's midlife, menopause or perimenopause, and some catastrophic situation where for you it was a father, the death of your father. And for me, it was a death of my business. the business that we had spent 20 years building. And at the time, it seems so monumental, and it is. I'm not minimizing that, but it actually is needed to break that identity because we need to coexist with a multi- multiple identities. It's just we were so honed in on that one only.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is, but the next chapters of our lives can't exist there.
Yeah.
And I'm not a scientist or a doctor or a neuro whatever. I just know from my own experience that that is the space, the crook. And that's why that's the birth of this book, is trying to figure that out. Honestly, the book is just meant for me. I'm just trying to write out all the things like I still want my dragon, but I don't want my dragon to be so like I'm just breathing fire everywhere I go.
It's autobiographical then, it sounds like, but it also sounds like it's a healing process for you. But I do believe that when it's written and published, that, it'll serve as therapy and, for other women, that are going through this. And I wanna bring up something because the whole good girl thing, you and I had a really interesting discussion the other day. And it was about imposter syndrome. We're also talking about copy and paste. And oh my gosh,
Make
the
it till you
sketching.
make it.
Yes. I have to wonder if this, after, like I said, I'm in this place where I'm realizing and I'm noticing in the moment the things that I'm doing, and possibly why I'm doing them. Do you think that this is kind of a space of like recognizing that we were imposter good girls? Like, were we, does that make
Ooh,
sense?
good question.
Because
Yes.
it's innate, yes, for us to want to like protect, and fix as women, but we also talked about that there's that conditioning from culture and society. So it's almost like, were we living as imposters in that era?
Oh my gosh. I felt that way my entire life, right? You know how people will say things like, God, I never felt like I fit in. Like
Yes.
I get that to a certain degree, but I feel it more as an imposter than fitting in because like you, I was living in two worlds consistently and not in my mind, but in that my external world of reality. Because culturally, I was brought up with generations of cultural expectation, being an only girl to my mother, right? Like my wedding, my children's name, and the way I had to exist as a parent wasn't just me on my own. It had a lot to do with what my mom expected and wanted. And there was this natural built in me of like, oh, but I got to do what my mom says. And the thing is, it's funny because I look back and I go, man, my mom was fun. I could probably whoop her. Not that I would, you know, but anytime she would breathe this like certain way that she would hold her breath or breathe it out, I'm like, God, okay. Yeah, granted, I loved my wedding but I had a wedding she wanted.
Yeah.
Right? Not the one that I wanted. And not that I have regrets with that because it was beautiful and lovely and it was all the things. I look back and I thought, all right, maybe that eloping thing wouldn't have worked out so well in terms of memory because here we are 30 years later. And I enjoy that we have pictures and that whole thing. But at the time, it wasn't what I wanted. She invited people I didn't even know. Like there was an entire section of this building that I was like, no clue who they were, right? But I also think so there's that imposter because I didn't want to fulfill the cultural expectation of so we compromised. Like I wasn't married in a church, which, you know, that was a thing, but I was married by a priest she wanted. And we did all the celebratory aspects the way she wanted, but we did it where I wanted it to be, right? So there was a lot of that because I stood my ground. But at the same time, there's that imposter of like, and then there's this thing also where my Filipino people will either love me for it or not like me for it. But so many times, my husband, who's white, not Filipino. They would say to him like, oh my gosh, you're married to a Filipino. I bet you eat real well and you get good food. Well, I didn't grow up learning how to cook, nor did I want to. It wasn't in my like repertoire of resume building was to know how to cook or want to. I didn't even enjoy, I enjoyed participating in other people's food. The assumption is, well, if she's Filipino, she should know how to cook and she should cook well and she should be cooking her native stuff. No, negative ghostwriter didn't know how to do any of that. And he would say, oh, yeah, well, I married the one in the millions of Filipinos. Doesn't enjoy that. Right. And so, again, imposter. I felt like an imposter syndrome because there was this expectation from non-Filipino people that I would do certain things, right?
Yeah.
And then in my culture, I grew up in a very religiously expectant also space. I grew up Catholic. I went to Catholic school, went to private schools, the whole thing. And to tell you the truth, I cannot remember a quote from the Bible to save my life. Like none, zero. Like I did all the things, did the communion, can't remember any of it, right? But here's what I do remember, that there are many little things you could do on a regular basis that will send you to hell. Like that much I knew. And so, right? So there's that conundrum of like, you know what? Like for instance, Catholics don't believe in divorce. I'm not afraid to do that. Like if it meant that my happiness was being like that was on the line for my marriage, I'm not afraid to do. But again, another imposter syndrome piece that's subconsciously in me because that is not a cultural norm. And then there's the family dynamic. So my mother comes from a type of family that would be considered like an elitist, right? And they have different expectations. Like, God forbid you leave the house looking a mess. Like that was a thing. That's not just thing I say to be funny. It legitimately, my mother, that when she saw me walking towards the door, there was a whole scanning process that she had to do from top to bottom. Is my hair in place? Do my shoes match? What's happening? And this weight issue was always a thing too. And not that she was shaming me, because there's a lot of language about too, like weight shame or body shaming. Her view was, am I presentable to represent her family type of thing, right? But there was this whole scanning thing where she'd literally say, yeah, that makes you look fat. These were actual words that came out of her mouth when I'd spent hours putting this outfit together. And I would just be like, but my imposter syndrome would be like, okay, maybe she's right. Maybe I should go change. And I would. Now, did it affect me in the long run of like, did I have any kind of disorders? And, that's a real thing. And my heart goes out to people that is affected. It didn't affect me that much because I just had a little bit more of like, don't care. Just keep talking, old lady. I'm not doing what you're right. But I would never say that to her. I was more respectful. I would just like, that's great to know, Mom. Bye. Or sometimes I would be like, maybe she's right. It didn't affect me nearly as much, but my brother who is into film, it did because he's a different kind of person. He took things a little more personally, and I can see that it affects him. So I think there's many layers of not belonging and the imposter syndrome. But I think for you and I, there's another layer of number one, immigrant parents feel like they have to be more. We are a representation of there being more.
Yeah.
So that's why I think my mom did that whole scanning thing before I went out the door, because she, she's a professional woman in America that added an extra level of layers of her life needed to also represent that, which is my brother and I.
Yeah.
We're
Well,
great.
on top of that too, there's generational conditioning,
Yeah.
for her as well, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Which then just trickles down to us, which is why I think these conversations are especially important, right? Because I mean, your kids, I know, were born here, right? But you're still very tied to your Filipino culture.
Right.
And, so, um, there's kinds of conversations are really important. And it's very interesting to hear about your perspective and, the way that you grew up. But I think what is a really, especially, I think very just great to hear too is, and maybe this is your work with your forgiveness coach, is I don't hear any bitterness, right? When you're telling me about how, your mom was like literally would say, okay, no, that makes you look fat. She's not saying you're fat. She's saying it makes you look fat.
Right.
There is a difference. And part of you is like, well, I'm just the type that, I can let things just roll right off of me, not a big deal.
Yeah.
But I think to hear you like no, to knowing that there's no bitterness in your heart, right? Because your mom uttered those words to you. Because I think it can easily go either way, right? Like where somebody's really like, I mean, in their 50s still holding on to that
Oh,
one
yeah.
thing, right? And I'm trying to have a moment of compassion here because I'm like, we start to become adults and then, we should be able to regulate and handle our emotions, start to kind of just self heal. Like, part of me wants to be like, just get over it. Right. But, I think maybe it's not so easy to get over it. Right. Because we have to start like for, forgiveness within us
Yeah.
first to get to that place. But it is very there's something very comforting to hear when you're talking, that there isn't this bitterness about the thing that your mom said or the things that she would do. I think
That's just now though. I'll be completely honest with you. I think I've done a lot of work going through that. And that's not what I initially thought. So in 2014, 2014, to that I'd already done a lot of therapy because my dad was an iron rod kind of father. So his upbringing was very physically violent. So I started therapy early on to just deal because his anger transferred into me. And I was like, God, why am I so angry all the time? Like, and then my first therapist said, she said, why are you here? And I said, well, I want to figure out why I'm so angry. And she goes, well, why are you angry? And then I got angry. I'm like, well, that's why I'm here is to figure out why are you asking me so then that didn't work out so well because I had just, my response was very angry. But I think for me, and then I kept doing these personal development things to learn more, right? To learn more about myself because awareness is key. So many thought leaders and therapists like awareness is key. Awareness is the first step. So I could be aware that I was having imposter syndrome, but to heal that version is also another step of like, well, why do I need to heal this imposter syndrome? Because it's kind of like, well, I'm aware of it now. If I'm aware of it, I know whether to choose into it or not to choose into it. The thing that I didn't recognize is patterns, right? We are habitual species. It's what creates all of this civility in our environment is because we have a routine, we have traditions, we have rules, we have regulations, we have structure, we have all of that. We need that for survival, but it also can't be the most consuming part of how we exist. And the only way I got there is when I asked, well, what does wonderful want? When I take away all that structure that I have been so conditioned into, I'm like, man, I don't know. I don't know. And then I'm like, God, this imposter syndrome, but it's not in the way that we see out in the world where it's like, when you're having success, that's imposter syndrome. I think it's deeper than that because there's ways that we have protected ourselves to blend in, to be part of, to belong to, right? Just every grade in school. Like, oh my gosh, that was another thing. I came to America not speaking English. I was 6 years old. That's a whole nother segment of myself that I impostered into because mom didn't come on a status where she was given a lot of information of like government support because she was recruited by a hospital. My mom was a pharmacist. And so she didn't know. She didn't know those things were available. We just immersed into the community. And so I went to school first grade without ESL because we didn't know that program existed at the time. This is in 1983 or 82 or something like that. And I didn't speak or understand English. And so I'm just sitting and, in that Charlie Brown thing where we're going, wah, 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 wah. Oh, that was me.
Yeah. My God.
I used to watch their lips to be like, maybe I could make sense of how their lips are moving. Nothing at all. So then I had to really hone in on my observational skills. Like if I just watched what they're doing, then I can kind of guess what the teacher wants from us, right? And so I spent my first year of education not knowing how to communicate anything. So I was an imposter right there. I had to make a decision to be an imposter because I had to belong in that space, but I couldn't communicate and they couldn't communicate to me. So the teacher and I would always point at stuff. She would point at something and point at this. And then, so I learned actually my first early stages of English is Sesame Street. I'm a huge fan of Sesame Street because that's how I learned how to speak English. Is I never did ESL ever. I never did any kind of extra activities in school that helped me to identify how to communicate in English, how to learn it, how to write English. It was just immersive.
I mean, you literally got thrown to the sharks. And it makes me think like, I think in certain cases, for our own survival, we have to be imposters, right?
Yes. Again, a good part, right? There is certain parts of survival we need a dragon, we need
Yeah.
imposter, but it can't be the thing that is the excuse to not step up within ourselves. I think
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, we can't continue to just be imposters 100% of the
Yeah.
time.
I mean, we could, but then we'd be like, on the news for narcissists.
Oh, I just pictured you being on your dragon flying through the sky and like there's helicopters everywhere and stuff. Wonderful dragon slayer. It's really fascinating. I guess I never thought about that. And this isn't to say that the good girl hasn't served us well. I think that it absolutely has. I pride myself on, being there for other people and, you know, what I'm learning to do instead of just immediately going into action mode and fixing is that I can be there for people by just listening, just like
Yeah.
I said, if they're just expressing their feelings or not, unless they actually ask, like, okay, Sonia, can you help me?
Specific.
Yeah. And I think you had mentioned one time, I think this is so great because I don't think we practice it enough or maybe at all. I think you sometimes go into conversations, you listen to what the person has to say, but I think you ask them too, like, what what do you need from me? Do you need me to fix something? I mean, I know you're not saying do you need me to fix something or whatever, but you're waiting for them to tell you what it is they need from you when they're coming to you with
Yeah.
this situation. How difficult has that been to put into practice? I say to put into practice because it's not innate in us, right? Like, again,
Yeah.
because we want to go into fixing mode. What was that process like for you? Like, just, implementing that.
I think I want to just put on again with a little bit of context that we are children of immigrants. The thing we have in common with that is both our parents came to the US from a professional perspective, not necessarily from a duress situation.
Yeah.
And that adds this other layer of, because even though my mom, as a professional, there were still things I needed to help her with to kind of, you know what I mean? Like she would always ask me things like, when I answer the phone, is my accent really thick? Because she was to be kind of different,
Yeah.
to be different in her professional environment. She didn't want to be. So when I had kids, she did not want to teach my kids our native tongue because she didn't want them to be confused in school of learning, which is now like my kids are mad. They're upset. Like, how come I don't know how to talk to God? Whatever. But my point is that I think there's that extra layer of the helping isn't just because we want to fix, it's because we've also been asked. But the way that my parents were asking wasn't necessarily, hey, I need you to fix this. It was
Yeah.
just like things like now when when I get a new phone, I just can't. I can't do it, right? I don't want to. Could I figure it out? Yes. But I know it's going to take time. That's why I hate getting new phones because it's like, and my kids are just like, Mom, seriously? It's the same phone. Like, you just gotta. So it's kind of the same thing, just different
Yeah.
because immigrant parents had a different view of how I was supposed to help Yeah. You know what I'm saying,
Yes,
right?
yes.
And I know there's other people out there that grew up with immigrant parents that are like, girl, I hear you. Why couldn't they figure like my mom turned 40 and all of a sudden she couldn't drive anymore. I had to drive her everywhere. Right? Like, what? By yourself and all of a sudden you don't know how to drive. I know we think it's funny now, but like these are parts of another layer that is unique. Sort of adds that element to it of that fix it mode just comes naturally because there were so many things in our lives that my mom didn't want to have to read permission slips. She just needed to know what she needed and then she would sign
Yes.
it,
Just get to the point, basically.
which made it easier also to forge things because
Yeah,
I'm like,
absolutely.
yeah, yeah.
Get away with it.
Where my other friends couldn't get away with because their moms read the stuff.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, no, you know what I mean? I like how many report cards I was able to hide from my parents. Not because they're stupid. I mean, they're very smart people, but just because I'm like,
Right.
you know,
Right.
yeah, the things we would get away with. Something is coming to mind for me. We're talking about, going into fix it mode and stuff. And I kind of liken it to like, it's just innate in women, especially. But I actually like what's coming to mind for me is my dad, right? So he was a provider through and through. But I think that why this is coming to mind is because he was also incredibly independent. So he was 85 when he passed away, and he was ill for about 7 months prior to that, and I was his caretaker. But as even prior to that, as he started to get older and slow down, what I started to realize is that I think he was mourning his independence, right? And I think that
Mhm.
there was a sense of like not being able to fix or help. Um, was yeah, he never said it out loud. And I'll quickly tell you there was this time where I was driving somewhere, had my back window just slightly open, just a crack, but enough to where a crow flew into it,
Yes,
right?
I remember this.
And like, crashed into my back seat and was there dead while I was driving. And I'm freaking out. I'm like 42 years old at this time.
That is scary.
It is, and I'm like, "I don't know what to do." So I, like, pull over into this parking lot, and I'm just sitting there stressed out. I'm like, "Don't know what to do." And I'm like, "I don't wanna call my 80-year-old father." Like, I'm just it's like and then I finally just bit the bullet, and I called him, and I'm like, he could obviously tell I was in distress, and I'm sure he wanted to laugh too when I told him what had happened. And he was like, "Okay, where are you? I'm coming." And I'm like, I feel really bad." And he's like, "No, I'm coming." So he comes out there, he handles it, right? Like, and I'm just like, I told him, I go, "I'm really sorry." And he was like, "Why are you sorry?" He's like, "I'm your dad." Right? That was it. And that really stuck with me because I'm like, he wants to be able to do that for me. Right. But
Mhm.
there came a point in his life where that was no longer possible. And I think that stopping and noticing that, like, okay, this person isn't necessarily asking for my help. I want to fix it. I think there's a kind of an aspect of mourning there too, right? Where it's like, oh, wait, you don't need my help? Like, and I think that's why I'm going back to the worthiness thing, right? But I think when I was saying in the beginning was I'm, trying to prove my worth, but what I'm, said, but it also comes down to self worth. And so I think that that's now what it's boiling down to is like, I'm not being asked for help, and that kind of makes me sad, right? Uh, but at the same time, it's like it's not. Then I'm not spreading myself thin though, like I've done, like
Right.
for the past like 50 years of my life. I have
Yeah.
thrived on that, don't get me wrong, but I think now my body and my mind are just in this place where it's like, you don't have to do that. You don't have to spread yourself. And in fact, like, physically, I'm going to show you that you cannot spread yourself thin anymore. Right. So, I wonder if that's what my dad was kind of, reckoning with towards the end of his life. Right.
Yeah, I wanna kinda bring in something because that story is just I remember when you called me and told me about that, and I thought it was so funny, but it was so sweet that your dad and I didn't even recognize that he was already in his 80s at that time. But I one of the reasons why I think I want to do these solo episodes, well, actually it's not solo because it's with you, but I say it. And why I wanna write this book really is my when you were telling that story about your dad, I felt this little ping in my heart of we have to grieve that version of us, because that's what I think your dad was experiencing is you're right. He wants to be useful. So do I. So do you. Right. And when your friend came to you and was like, oh my gosh, just sharing the story, didn't say, hey, can you help me? And your
Yeah.
immediate is because kids or no kids, every human being wants to feel needed. It's
Yeah.
part of our makeup, it's part of our community tribe affection for each other is to
Yeah.
be needed and to give back. And so when I asked myself, what does Wonderful want? I am thinking of it as like, yes, what does Wonderful want? Get on the dragon, fly around, see what's the new place. When my forgiveness, when Brenda says to me, that's great, but you also have to grieve the life that you've had. And
Mhm.
I was like, "No, I don't. I don't want to. That sounds horrible." Like, "What? No." And then it just naturally happens. I really am like just talking about it right now because you're right. My At 80, if my daughter called me and said, "Oh my god, there's this crow in my car." 100% be like, "Got it. Be there in a second." But knowing that you can't continue to do that at the rate that you were doing it at, we have to grieve it. And that's when you said, you used the word mourning. And for me, that's why this is important to me now. Like, why now? I think you asked me in the last episode, like, why now? Why not before? I think it's because I've been going through such a process of healing, forgiving, letting go, releasing, shedding that I'm in the stage of grieving that version. I have to grieve the version of me that we met when we met
Yeah.
in our 30s, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And my mom has been gone now 20 plus years, and I still grieve her.
Yeah.
I still grieve. There's still moments where I'm like, God, I miss her so much and I want her to be here. But really, I don't think it's her. I think it's me that I'm grieving. I think the process you're going through right now is not necessarily your dad, right? It's the version of you when he was alive
Yeah.
that we're grieving. I mean, and that's why I think these conversations are important because, yeah, there's all these facets of like we're immigrant children, we're parents of immigrant parents, we are women of color, we are women. Those are all the layers of external things. Have loved, been betrayed, been hurt, all of the things. And we're healing from that. We're forgiving that. But there's this other unspoken space of we grieve more often than we admit. And we need to grieve more often than we admit.
Yeah.
And that's the piece that has been hard for me to share. That's the vulnerable piece that these episodes I know are going to come to light because I haven't done it. I've done it privately, but I think there's so much healing also to grieve publicly.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think, I've heard this said a million times in a million different ways, but, the beautiful thing about grieving is that that means that it was something beautiful to begin with,
Mm,
right? We're grieving
yeah.
it, and how you're so blessed, right? To be able to, I mean, I had my dad for 49 years and, would I've loved for him to live longer? Absolutely. But like, you know, I, was it perfect? No, but like to know that I had that kind of relationship with him for 49 years and, he was the first love of my life. He was my hero and, grieving it has been a difficult thing,
Yeah.
but I also recognize that it's the grief is beautiful because I had that. And I still
Right.
do, because I have the memory of it and I have the feeling of
Right.
it. And, and I believe that the spirit does live on. So, I feel that my dad is all around me. And so, that's something I really take to heart when I hear people say that, grief is absolutely a beautiful thing. And so I think we need to honor that, and the beautiful way that you're doing it too, where, you're grieving what was, and you're honoring what's happening and what's to come.
And it wasn't and that's not an easy thing too. I feel like I also want to put out there in the world that just because 'cause we're having this conversation now, there were a lot of times of my own, like, I cried by myself in my bedroom or, there are days where I wake up and I'm like, "I miss that old life. I
Yeah.
miss that." Sometimes I'm like, "Why am I taking a nap in the middle of the day?" Remember that version of you that was just kicking ass all day, all the time?
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
what how do I still look like I'm 20 taking naps? I'm kidding. It's like this, I have to it's just getting to know the version of me today without having to pull on the past to make me feel good or, like, be so in the future. That is a real thing. The present moment is a gift, but it's also not as easy to live in when you're in a consistent grieving, celebrating, grieving, celebrating, grieving, celebrating. Whereas before I was just celebrating all the time, right?
Yeah.
Grief, I could just keep shoving it. Because when you're younger, you have so much more, you're chasing things down
Yeah.
at a
Yeah.
faster rate. So you don't, but in midlife, you actually pause.
Yeah.
You pause and you go, wait, hold on, what is it? And one of the things that I learned through, again, I'm gonna refer to my forgiveness coach a lot in these episodes. So just be aware. And when she said, uh, grief needs a witness. And I remember when she said it, I was like, wow, that's so powerful and yet also so new.
Yeah.
And that's why you find people that you trust to share your depth with, right?
Yeah.
Although I am now sharing it with the world, well, whoever's listening out there. And it's because it's right for me. I've done my own private grieving. I've done grieving where I was witnessed by people I trust, like yourself and my coaches, my husband, right? I've been in the space where I felt safe to release these emotions out of me that
Yeah.
wasn't going to be thrown back at me or, like, be judged or be betrayed in some way. And I I feel like the life I have is giving me the opportunity to share it with others. It's not for everyone, and not everyone needs to get on a podcast and share their journey. It just felt right for me, and it felt right for me now, and it felt right for me to do it this way, right, with you. And that's what the message when I'm talking about when our truth is revealed, it doesn't have to be a certain way that
Yeah.
people can imagine. It is your way. That's what the truth is
Yeah.
it's in your way, no matter
Well,
what that looks like.
I think it's important to, like, for people to recognize, like, I think from what I'm hearing when you're saying grief should have a witness is these kind of conversations, whether they're in private or they're being broadcast, publicly. It's important, right? To have these conversations. Even if that means, like, I love to write, and even if that means
Yes,
journaling it, right? Like, getting it out on paper, that is still like that's a witness, right? Because it's not
yes,
there
yes,
is something that happens to us physically when we're just holding it all in,
yes,
and so pen to paper for those that don't feel comfortable saying it out loud, pen to paper. You don't have to be a writer to do that. Like, it's
yes.
just such a powerful thing to do.
Yeah. I do wanna throw in here, y'all, my friend Sonia is the most poetic writer ever. I'm a consumer of written word. Consumer. Like, I have been a book reader and I'm dyslexic, so it's kind of interesting. Anyways, I love books. My favorite part of the house is the library. I'm just giving you context on why I am giving her a shout out right now. My son went to college to be a writer. Like, writing is a form of art to me that I think is like test the time. Like, that's the only way we know how to progress is because somebody left a written document about what it was like in that time. And of all the right authors I have read, I'm a huge fan of Hemingway. So you can tell kind of the type of prose I like. right? The type of writing I like. Huge fan of Mitch Albom. Sonia's writing is just so poetically beautiful, and she's got a Substack. So I highly suggest you go and follow her on Substack and read all her stuff, because you too will be a fan like me. And I'm not just saying this because she's my friend and she's interviewed me and she's right here. I don't endorse things I don't myself believe in, consume, partake in, and all of that. And that's why I think when this idea came to me of, gosh, I want to do solo episodes, but I'm not really as keen to talking to myself because I'm not, I'm really curious about other people. I'm not as curious about myself. Hence, that's why I can't do solo episodes so well. But when I thought about who could get that out of me, I thought of you, because you could take this outline that I created, which is skeletons, and turn it into a full-blown human that's blossomed, because you look at words in a different way. Like, to me, words is a way as how to make sense of something. That to me is my reasoning, like, oh, words, there's power in words. I would have made a great lawyer. However, you look at words as like a dance, and the way you choreograph this play of just beauty is beyond anything I've read. So she hasn't written a book, but she's got a Substack. And when she writes a book, I also recommend that. Enough of Sonia's commercial. Back to regular broadcast.
Thank you for the plug. Yes.
We will have that in the show notes, her Substack link, because I really believe this is. And anyways, I could keep going. Enough already, because our time is
Yeah,
up.
this is the Sonia Show. This is the wonderful solo podcast. Excuse me. This, as usual, how we always like end our 6-hour phone conversations as well, is always so enlightening, wonderful. And look, I know we're friends with each other. We're each other's we celebrate each other, we support each other. But I really believe that you are an absolute gift to this world. And the fact that you are now sharing your story with the world is an even bigger gift. And this will be preserved and hundreds of years down the road in whatever format it's going to be in, people are going to be consuming this and it's still going to be relevant, and it's going to make people think and think deep and think about their own situations and come to their own conclusions and their own reckonings. And it's made me realize that, you know what, I'm every day I'm reckoning, right? And it's a good thing. Reckoning is absolutely a good thing, because we do need to appreciate and be in gratitude of where we were and look forward to where we're going. And on that note, wonderful. I thank you so much for your time and your wisdom. And I am looking forward to digging deeper, because let me tell you, that was just one question that led to this whole conversation. So there's still many, many more burning questions that I cannot wait to get to.
My gosh. Well, thank you. Thank you for stepping into this role. I want to say that in every single episode, because the journey to midlife, the journey of a woman in midlife, is one that needs exposure, that
Yeah.
needs conversation,
And needs
and
celebration too.
celebrated. And from all of us, it's not just me and you. I mean, every woman in midlife should have their own podcast right now and just be
Yeah.
talking about their life and having the thing, because all of us have a different version of it. And there's really not a lot of data or places we can go where we could hear what our grandparents were like, what our grandmothers, our mothers were like. We start here in this era of ourselves. And who knows, 5 generations later, there could be one for every generation. But gosh, there's too much to be shared to not share. It's about
So
spreading our wisdom.
I'm declaring right here, right now, we have sweet 16s. We need to start celebrating magnificent menopause. I think that,
Ooh, ooh.
right? I mean, it's such a significant time in our lives. And at some point, every woman will go through it. And there's always been this stigma around it. And, yeah, it's a confusing time. I'm not going to lie, but there's also this magnificence about it, because look, we're really coming into who we know we are. And, it's a beautiful thing. So it should be celebrated. So yeah, you know what? Magnificent menopause, sweet 16, magnificent menopause. Let's bookend those two things.
Yes. I mean, not so much anymore, but in my heyday, I loved get-togethers and parties. And my friend Sonia is also very well versed in party creating and party going. And I don't know. I'm just saying that not right now. I don't got the energy right now, but maybe in a couple months we could have an energy to throw a party for this magnificent menopause. I
It'll
mean,
be a theme.
throw a party.
It'll be a Bollywood theme because you can come in Indian outfits.
And you and your community throw some parties. I think the funnest wedding I've ever been to was an Indian wedding.
Yeah.
Legit.
They're
Yeah.
a lot of work. They're a lot of work.
So fun. So fun. It's celebrated by every generation. Like that. I think that was the funnest thing is when I looked on a dance floor, I was like,
Oh, yeah.
wow, great grandmas were out there.
My dad was always the first out there, and he would grab me immediately too. And Bee Gees I'll tell you, my dad loved every genre of music. Bee Gees were his
Oh
jam.
my gosh.
Oh my God. Like he would hit
Yes.
that beat and it was like immediately he's out on the dance floor just kicking it. Just kicking it. I mean, loved it. We went to a family wedding in Mexico. I think it was like almost 10 years ago. So my dad would have been about 78 and he was out there. Like he had those like rave type of lights that you the neon lights on. I have video of this. He had that on. He was out there dancing. It was his granddaughter's wedding, and he's a huge smile on his face, tiny little man. And I just was like, some things never change. And so
Yeah.
it was a beautiful sight. So yeah. So yes,
Yes.
we're gonna party. We're gonna do magnificent menopause. Everyone's invited.
That sounds amazing. Well, we'll just keep that on the burner
Yes.
on low heat and
Yes.
see where that goes because I believe because that's what this is all about. Like, and I don't even want to stop talking right now. I just want to like keep chatting with you, but we have to go because I do have another appointment. But there's so much I'm easing into. I'm easing into sharing, and I am so grateful that you are the one to pull me into my sharing. Anyhow, let's keep spreading wisdom. And until next time, everyone, thank you so much. Bye.
As we close this space, thank you for listening with presence. If something in today's episode stirred recognition, a quiet yes, or a feeling you have not had words for before, that is not something to rush past. Let it settle. Her truth revealed is not about becoming someone new. It is about remembering who you are beneath the life you learned how to survive. Wherever you are in your midlife journey, hear this clearly. You are not late, you are not behind, and you are not doing this wrong. You are unfolding exactly as you are meant to. We will keep walking this path together, one truth at a time. Until next time, be gentle with yourself and keep listening for your truth.